You know that feeling when you're scrolling through endless monitor specs and wondering if any of them will actually make a difference in your gaming rig, or if you're just throwing money at a fancy screen that ends up collecting dust? It's especially frustrating when you've already spent a good chunk on a high-end graphics card and you're scared of picking a display that doesn't play nice with it, or that looks great on paper but feels like a compromise in everyday use. That hesitation is real, and I get it, nobody wants to waste money on the wrong thing. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's talk about the ASUS ROG Swift 27-inch OLED gaming monitor, model PG27AQWPW. This isn't just another 4K panel, it's a QHD OLED that can flip between a 540Hz QHD mode and a 720Hz HD mode, thanks to ASUS's Tandem OLED technology. The headline numbers sound insane, but what really matters is how those numbers translate when you're actually in the middle of a fast-paced shooter or a competitive MOBA. First off, who should even consider this monitor? If you're a competitive esports player who lives for frame-perfect reflexes, the ultra-high refresh rates combined with OLED's instant pixel response can shave off those crucial milliseconds. The 0.02 milliseconds response time means you won't see the ghosting that can creep into LCDs at high speeds, and the dual-mode switch lets you decide whether you need that extra pixel density for detailed RPG scenery or you want to push the absolute max refresh for a 1080-style fast-action match. On the other side of the fence, if you're mainly watching movies, doing office work, or you're a casual gamer who's happy with 144 Hz, this monitor is probably overkill, both in price and in the extra power draw that OLED panels demand. Now, let's get into the practical strengths. The most noticeable perk is the TrueBlack Glossy surface. Unlike matte panels that try to diffuse light, this glossy finish gives you a crystal-clear image with zero haze. In a dimly lit gaming room, the blacks truly disappear, which makes any game with dark environments feel immersive. Coupled with the VESA DisplayHDR 500 TrueBlack compliance and a 99.5% DCI-P3 color gamut, you're getting deep, punchy colors that look almost cinematic. I tried a color grading session in a recent indie game that boasts a vibrant palette, and the monitor reproduced the hues exactly as the developers intended, with no banding. The Neo proximity sensor is another real-world convenience. It detects when you're actually sitting in front of the screen and can automatically enable or disable the OLED Care Pro settings. That means you won't be stuck with static burn-in protection settings that you have to tweak manually. In practice, the sensor dimmed the screen to a comfortable level when I stepped away for a coffee break, then brightened it back up when I returned, saving me a few clicks and keeping the panel's lifespan in check. Connectivity is where this monitor really shines for a high-end setup. The DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR20 cable carries a full 80 gigabits per second bandwidth, so you can push the 540 Hz QHD signal without any compression. If you've already invested in a RTX 4090 or the latest Radeon, you'll be able to drive the monitor at its max refresh without bottlenecking. There's also an HDMI 2.1 port for console gamers, which means you can hook up a next-gen Xbox or PlayStation and still get the high refresh, albeit at the HD mode. Of course, no product is perfect, and there are practical trade-offs. The biggest one is the price tag. This isn't a budget upgrade, you're looking at a four-figure investment, and the value really hinges on how much you'll use that 540 Hz QHD mode. If you're a streamer who wants the absolute smoothest motion for your audience, the investment might pay off in perceived quality. But for a typical desktop gamer, the difference between 240 Hz and 540 Hz on a 27-inch screen can be hard to discern, especially if you're not playing at 4K resolutions. Another consideration is the glossy surface itself. While it gives you that deep black look, it also means you have to manage reflections. In a bright room with windows or overhead lighting, you'll notice glare more than you would on a matte panel. I found that positioning a biased lighting strip behind the monitor helped mitigate that issue without sacrificing the contrast. Heat and power consumption are also worth noting. OLED panels tend to run hotter than IPS LCDs, and because this model can crank up brightness for HDR content, you'll see a higher wattage draw. If you have a compact desk setup or limited power capacity, make sure your PSU and the ventilation around the monitor are adequate. In my own rig, the monitor stayed within safe temperature ranges, but I did have to leave a bit more clearance behind the stand than I normally would. Lastly, the warranty and support. ASUS backs this model with a 3-year warranty, which is decent for a premium product. However, OLED screens can be susceptible to burn-in over many years of static UI elements. ASUS's OLED Care.